Have a powerful morning, all you unbreakable people, is what I'd like to say, but I won't, because it's almost evening already. Still, you can drink coffee from a mug like this. It says, have a powerful morning, all you unbreakable people here. And on a t-shirt like this, it says the same thing. I even spilled coffee from the Unbreakable Morning mug onto the Unbreakable Morning t-shirt. Well, anyway, let's get started. You can buy all of this at the link in the description. And now about what happened? There's a lot that happened. For example, Syrskyi is apparently going to be fired. Suddenly, as they say, and it hasn't even been 6 months. Here, Fedorov was fired, and that defense minister too, and now Syrskyi is being fired. Who, why, for what reason? We're figuring it out. So, Zelensky is looking for a replacement for Syrskyi and is interviewing candidates. Despite the fact that Syrskyi was brought in, according to rumors, as someone who does absolutely everything Zelensky says, then all the problems will immediately be dumped on him. And they'll announce that a reliable person has been found who can implement new technologies. It is rumored that Zelensky may replace Ukraine's commander-in-chief. And this weekend, he is meeting with military commanders to hear their assessment of the situation at the front and to interview possible candidates for the position of commander-in-chief. And by the way, it's not Ukrainian sources that are reporting this first, but the Financial Times. Obviously, the sources at the Financial Times are more reliable, more trustworthy than Ukrainian sources. This is extremely interesting. According to the publication's source, the decision to change the leadership will only be made under one condition. If someone is found who can ensure uninterrupted command of the troops along a front line more than 1,200 kilometers long. Well, all of this escalated after the conflict between Fedorov and Syrskyi. It was said that Fedorov doesn't understand Syrskyi, Syrskyi doesn't understand Fedorov, and Zelensky doesn't understand either of them. So he decided to fire the one whose dismissal would hurt less, apparently. Another source says the same thing, but here it's in more detail. For example, he says that Fedorov told the media about Syrskyi blocking attempts to reform the Ministry of Defense and accused Syrskyi of corruption. But in addition, Fedorov showered Syrskyi with compliments for defending Kyiv in the first week of the invasion and for the 2022 counteroffensive in Kharkiv and Kherson. According to Fedorov, if Ukraine wants to defeat the enemy with minimal losses, it needs to change the commander-in-chief and the chief of the general staff. By the way, Fedorov's supporters are already saying that maybe Zelensky should be replaced as well, because Fedya said this. Deputy Kinya stated yesterday that all the problems are up there at the top. It was surprising to hear something like that from Deputy Kinya. It's just, well, that never happened before, and here we go again. Fedorov and Syrskyi's approaches are very, different, because they had different views on how to conduct the war. The Minister of Defense, that is Fedorov, saw drones and automation as the future of warfare. And when the general and even Ukrainian media now publish his nickname, which didn't happen before, remained a supporter of the traditional method, which focuses on assault infantry and artillery. But the Europeans also welcomed Fedorov because, well, he's such a capable person, someone who came from humble beginnings and suddenly became the Minister of Defense. Everyone came out of the woodwork, absolutely all those barbershop specialists from all sorts of ukalisis to those Rolex enthusiasts, Sternenkos and all the rest. Suddenly, Sternenko began to criticize Syrskyi and stated that the commanders of Ukrainian brigades were ordered to record video messages in support of Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi. He immediately published some vague messages where he was told that videos were needed for Syrskyi. And he says that on July 18, brigade commanders received an order to record and publish a video in support of Syrskyi by 5 p.m. again on July 18. Then the same thing happened in the airborne assault troops and in the defense forces as well. Brigade commanders were given an order to film videos in support of Syrskyi. The soldiers who spoke out against it are being subjected to repression. Sternenko claims that one of the soldiers from the scandalous Skala unit published a post against Syrskyi and then disappeared. That is not just a post, but apparently this very military account was deleted. Well, anyway, that's how things are. This very person who supposedly fights but is sometimes in Paris, then in Spain or somewhere else, together with this Alina Mercedes, he claimed that he received what's it called, dogana. I forgot the Russian word, but you get the idea. It's like a reprimand from Syrskyi, you could say, and the officer didn't state the reason why he could have been punished. But he did say that Mikhail Fedorov is doing a good job, and as for removing him, well, with swearing, obviously, these guys just don't know any other words. and removing Fedorov is a very bad idea. And then that same Filimonov said, just imagine what kind of protest there could be if they tried to remove Sersky. And of course, there was a protest. A few thousand people showed up with cardboard signs, many bearing identical messages in the same handwriting. Some attendees didn't even know why they were there. In short, it's a sort of fake maiden, or as they call it, a cardboard maiden, something like that. But there, remember, in the Vysotsky movie, when his character Zheglov was called a fool. No, it was his partner when he was infiltrating the gang, a black cat, I think, who was called an idiot. Well, something like that, more or less. Maybe there are some people there who are genuinely protesting, of course, but when you see a few dozen people and they're asked, what are you doing here? What? And they say, why? We don't know. Then you start to have some doubts. The wife of Fedorov, that former defense minister, immediately said that she suddenly became scared. It's scary because the family is getting a lot of attention from the media and all sorts of different people. And she's worried about it. I'm scared. She says she's afraid to live in a country where people can't stop at being grateful for results, for decent protection, for justice, but instead start creating a sick cult of personality. And then there's the swearing again. Well, for all these people, swearing is their main way of communicating. They can't do without it. She said that a family video with her husband is being spread on social media feeds. People use this family video in their fantasies. It's all very strange somehow. Honestly, I barely understand what this is about. Who is she? Where did she come from? I had never seen any photos of Fedorov's wife before, and especially not in any accounts with the kind of stuff she's talking about. Maybe it's an attempt to draw attention to herself or something else. Well, maybe that's how it was, I don't know. But still, she says, I really want my daughter to grow up in a country where no one is persecuted and people aren't turned into idols. But before, like when her husband became the Minister of Defense 6 months ago, for some reason she didn't say that she didn't want her daughter to grow up in a country where the draft offices run wild and people are persecuted just because they don't want to fight. No one made any statements until it affected her personally. Then she quickly told everyone about the horror in the country. It truly is horrible, but only those dressed up noticed. So it's like that proverb. When they imprisoned the communists, I stayed silent. Then when they imprisoned others, I stayed silent. And when they came for me, there was no one left to speak up. Well, this goes back to the times of Germany, of the Reich itself. She says she wants her daughter to grow up in a country where women have self-respect and dignity. Otherwise, it will be very hard for me to explain to her why she lost so many childhood joys just because she was born into our family. And then, well, there was this strange thing, this statement. She did attract attention, but only with this strange statement, because on one hand it seemed to be about a personality cult, on another about sexualization, on a third about descendants, and on a fourth it's not even clear what it was about. There's a lot of text, the form is there, but honestly the content is pretty weak. But maybe this says something, maybe I haven't dug deep enough to find the real meaning, and there are 3 layers of truth, and I've only reached halfway through the first one. But there's also some information about the front lines. Or rather, about the actions being taken to make sure this front doesn't collapse in either direction. In particular, the Ukrainian armed forces destroyed a huge Wild Breeze warehouse in the Moscow region. It's burning so much there that it looks more like a volcano, all of this. And it's reported that this happened on the night of July 18th. Drones launched a massive attack on the Moscow and Tambov regions. In Noginsk and Elektrostal, fires broke out at an oil depot and a logistics center. Another marketplace warehouse is on fire in Kotovsk, in the Tambov region. Sorry if I put the stress on the wrong syllable, but I'm not an expert in all these names. There are hundreds of them, and, well, in general, sorry, but you can write me angry comments. The problem is that the sellers, the millions of sellers who depend on Wild Breeze, haven't gotten anything back. So if your goods burned down, and there were goods worth many millions of rubles, well, it's your own problem and you have to recover on your own. In other words, there's no protection. Maybe someone got something back, but I've already seen that happen. Being involved in online trading myself with all sorts of things, electronics for example, I can imagine the level of desperation that these sellers might reach. Because if your things burn down in the warehouse, well, actually compensating for that, well, what's the big deal? There was nothing like that mentioned in their contract. And all of this is burning, well, just look at this and at this. I mean, the smoke there rises like an actual volcano, and the smoke clouds have already reached all the way to Moscow. Just imagine the scale of this fire. These aren't clouds, that's smoke in the sky. Smoke in the sky, blocking out the sun, the warehouse is burning, and as a result, all of this rises even higher. So that's how it is. The attack was reported by monitoring channels and the governor of the Tambov region, so that's when the real mess began.
Something is really burning, damn. Something just burst into flames. God damn it, fuck.
Okay, well, there's a bunch of swearing here, that's not mine, so... the ground. Well, just a little bit here. This is probably just the beginning. And here as well, this is probably what happened after that evening that was leaked, yeah. Well, in short, it's burning really badly. Zelensky explained why he gave the order for that very strike on the Wildberries warehouses. It turns out they were being used to support the Russian army. Zelensky stated that drone components were stored at the Wildberries warehouses. He called the attack by Ukrainian drones a response to Russian strikes on Ukraine's civilian infrastructure. But Russia is bombing and shelling Nova Pochta warehouses and some supermarkets. In response, Ukraine apparently bombs as well. In short, all these boomerangs are flying in different directions. Ordinary people are suffering, including businesses. Meanwhile, the leaders, the powerful heads of state, say that's it, we're going all the way. The planes are flying, we're going to bomb. Zelensky also said, well, basically, the usual stuff came out, it's not even worth reading for meaning. But there is a real response too. They shelled the port in Odessa. Ports have been shelled more than once or twice already in Ukraine, and it's a huge problem because port infrastructure doesn't just get restored easily. There's a huge amount of unique equipment there. And now some of the owners of the cargo ships which are also being shelled in these ports are saying, sorry, but we won't be doing business with you anymore, so to speak. And they're chartering cargo ships, or actually the ships are being sent elsewhere. They're sending them to other places. Accordingly, it's unclear what's happening with the grain. Right now, grain prices are falling inside Ukraine, not on the global market, because there's simply nowhere to put it. Usually, Ukraine used to export grain. Some of it stayed in the country, but most of it was sent abroad. Well, Ukraine is really a breadbasket, one of the breadbaskets, not just for Europe, but also for Africa and some other countries. And now suddenly this breadbasket has been cut off from external connections. And something can only be done here in an extreme case. Well, for example, a truce or peace in such cases. They emphasized that a dry cargo ship was hit during the shelling. It was damaged. The Russian Ministry of Defense says that ammunition was being unloaded. But here in general, both sides, as usual, blame each other. It's like mutual back-scratching. But here it's the opposite. They keep accusing each other all the time. They say those ones are bad or those ones are bad. No, the ones here are awful and everything is bad. In Crimea, there is still a huge problem with gasoline. Here, the head of Crimea says the following.
So, regarding fuel, unfortunately, there won't be guaranteed daily gasoline sales at gas stations. That is, we can't create exact schedules yet. Therefore, the tension will remain for some time. As for electricity, it's impossible to create a schedule today that would evenly distribute electricity across the territory of the Republic of Crimea. As I already said, after the crisis situation is over and the goals set by the head of state are achieved, I will explain everything in full. For now, I will explain the situation, the reason, and the causal relationship.
Well, that's how things are. In other words, it's extremely difficult. On both sides, things are getting worse and worse. But at the same time, both sides say that we have democracy, everything is great, the enemy is defeated, and victory will be ours. These words are now said almost daily. The old symbols are worn out and can't be used anymore. Let's take a look at some untarnished, powerful leaders. The first one is this character who's been in the US since 2022. He looks sternly at the screen and talks about how people shouldn't be allowed to leave the country. He himself. Just imagine the intensity of emotions, the height of madness. There's this character sitting there who, as far as I understand, is still getting paid as a deputy. This character is sitting in the US and talking about how it's wrong to let people leave Ukraine. But here I think only a professional can help. But not an expert in economics or political science, rather someone with a more medical background. Let's continue.
To be continued. By the way, I also think it's wrong and criminal for the authorities to let all young Ukrainians leave the country.
Then go to Ukraine. You're not that old yet. I think you're still far from 60. Go to Ukraine and defend the country since you think it's wrong to just hang around in your own kitchen. Well, go back then, huh?
In Thanatol, without an accent, it means participation, not deprivation.
We, says the person who is sitting in the US, we...
Of the mobilization pool, but of Ukraine's future, as these people held positions now vacant with no way to fill them.
In general, part of this mobilization pool is sitting in their kitchen and jumping around, telling people that they should go to the front and die. Well, because here we are, he says. Then there's also this character, another barbershopper, talking about how people are coming back, it turns out, from AWOL, from unauthorized absence from the unit, straight to the front to, well, do something. Young Lennon is now not young Lennon and not Elton John. This is the cyber version of Lennon. This is from a parallel reality. Vladimir Ulyanov flew to us from the left, who turned into this weird imitation of a cyber hero. And the jacket stayed the same, the tie stayed the same, but everything else changed. Let's listen.
Potem is showing up. Potem Uwaziew and also the brigade commander Piperzui.
One thing hasn't changed. Cyber Lennon is sleeping, just like in all the other versions. When these characters are telling their stories, this journalist is just sleeping and apparently having good, pleasant dreams. And no matter what video they send, huge thanks to the person who shares them, he's sleeping in all of them. It's just crazy. Sometimes he suddenly becomes active, but then the intensity fades and his eyes close again.
A note appears on the phone saying, on the way. This means the person could already be heading to the military unit without any obstacles.
That's actually
really cool. If you want to, you can go to the military unit on your own.
Like that. Damn, it's good that the guy told you, Vadim. Ponika. Ponika said that you can return to the military unit, come in person, on your own 2 feet. Can you imagine? No one knew that. But everyone is hiding. They don't want to go play army. People just don't know that you can go there. Ah, damn.
We have people who have already returned. We have such positions. That's why these are the conditions. This is what you'll be driving, and this is what you'll be working with.
You'll be riding this horse over to that tree line. I think it's a great opportunity. Perfect. Well, and there's also this bloodthirsty character. He's always coming up with some bloodthirsty ideas in his kitchen. At the same time, of course, he's a draft-exempt little pastry, not looking threatening at all. But his ideas are just wild. And he says there's no gasoline in Russia. That's the kind of deep analysis you get from little pastries.
More and more videos are appearing online now.
I started coughing from the excitement.
Russians are literally crying because they managed to fill up their cars.
You just interrupted. There was a very interesting piece of news that they canceled. What was it? They were supposed to give away the horses. The horses were supposed to be given for meat. 1,000 horses. They chose to keep them for use instead of giving them away, since there's no fuel. Now they're switching to horses. Thank you.
Yes, with the hedgehogs from the groves, I see. Well, and the last guest in our studio today is Omelian. This is another character who's about as interesting as they come. In short, Omelian is facing criminal charges for deceiving servicemen. Well, he claimed that he served, but in reality, he didn't serve. So basically, a whole criminal case was opened. He immediately packed his things and went to the United Kingdom, and now he's staying there in the UK. Again, this is a person who is facing criminal charges for draft dodging. And they're discussing how, you see, other people don't want to serve in the army. Just imagine how much these TV shows discredit themselves with characters like Melnichenko. Or that Omelian, who, together with Elon Musk, never built the Hyperloop in Ukraine. It's all just talk, nonsense, you know how it goes. So, Omelian. He's in favor of draft dodgers joining the army. Everyone except for Kolyant himself, because he's a war hero. Once he sent a photo from another trench near Kiev, where his leg was wrapped in a single layer of bandage. He didn't mention that his bone was shattered by a shot, apparently from some enemy borscht launcher. And listen.
Your role is to cook, not command.
But here she is.
The state promised quick provision, but you ended up without water or bread.
So what if you went abroad? Then if they send you straight to a restaurant, apparently everyone, the commander sends everyone at once. Alright, soldiers, have fun today. Here's some money for the restaurant. The more luxurious it is, the more powerful it is, and you can eat there. But usually these soldiers are not just people off the street, but people tied to lawmakers. like various Omelians and others, stronger guys, the elite.
And you as a drone operator, hold the position now. Why is the key point not where the foot is being picked up now? Why is the key point where you maintain fire control?
For example, in the United Kingdom, you can control a drone.
You can't turn it off. You just work with your hands.
He found a new frontier in the United Kingdom. You could even name a book like that, Memoirs of Omelian, The New Frontier.
In London, it's 95%. You're under the command of competent combat commanders who protect your life and health. And then you know that after these 2 or 3 years in the army, you come back, the state retrains you if you lost your profession or need a new one, and you get a job placement.
Well, again, under all this, one question comes up. Why did you run away then, if everything is so great? Why didn't you retrain as some kind of a salt cook or a salt economist? What about them? But apparently Omelian is more needed in Britain than in Ukraine. Well, that's how things are. Goodbye, everyone.